Hi everyone, now first things first, I never do this normally, but just for once, if you like the video or if you have watched some of my videos before and you enjoy them or you think they're useful or interesting in some way, do us a favour and give that little subscribe button a bit of a tickle, maybe the bell as well. It'd be awesome if I could get to 200 subscribers by the end of today. That's all I'm saying. It'd be really cool. And yeah, if like I say, if you've seen my videos before and you like what you see, or you think they're interesting, or they help you get to sleep at night or whatever, then yeah, give that little subscribe button a bash and it'd be greatly appreciated. Now, normally I make videos about gambling and drinking and my my recovery and my struggle with addiction. And actually I will touch on that in this video. But what I want to talk about today is a bit of a personal story, really. It's about how I started a business and the two things that cost me that business and caused that business to fail. And they were both failures on my part. And like I say, addiction will certainly come into it. So go back to 2014 and I was on eBay, doing as I do quite regularly still to this day, and just looking at random things that maybe I could buy or sell and maybe make a couple of quid on. I stumbled across a job lot of old hi-fi stuff, old vintage sort of 70s and 80s hi-fi stuff. There was cassette decks and receivers and all of those sorts of things, turntables, and I had a little look, and there was basically a shed full of this stuff, and I sort of zoomed in on the photos and tried to identify as many of the models as I could, and I worked out that actually there was some really quite valuable rare stuff in there, things that sell for sort of 200-300 quid, and the bidding was only about £100 I think for the whole lot. So I won the auction. I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible because I know I can ramble, but I won the auction and I had to drive about 70 miles I think to go and pick this lot up, but I paid about £200 I think for this job lot. And if anyone knows anything about hi-fi, there was a couple of gold ring turntables in there, a couple of old AWA, old school AWA cassette decks, a couple of Technics bits, loads of cool stuff. And I think I sold the whole lot, once I'd taken my eBay fees and all the rest of it into consideration, I probably made about £1,000 profit. And if I knew now what I knew then about listings and markups and all the rest of it, I probably could have made a lot more. But I was delighted. I'd made about £1,000 really easily, and all this while working full time. So I thought, well, actually, I wonder if there's money in this stuff. So I as I said, I used to buy and sell a few bits and pieces just to make a few extra quid, and so I started targeting vintage hi-fi stuff. I started looking at some of the sort of rare stuff, some of the stuff that people put on auctions, and maybe didn't know a huge amount about. And I thought, well, actually, there's quite a ready supply of this stuff. So I started buying and selling a bit more, and I worked out that sort of 3 or 4 months in, I turned over about £5,000 in a month. And I boiled that down to what profit I'd made, and I thought, well, actually, if I could do this every month, it wouldn't be a fantastic income, but I could actually make an income out of doing this, a full-time income. And also what I could do then is I'd have all this extra spare time, so I could buy and sell even more stuff. So being the kind of impulsive, possibly foolish guy that I am, I thought, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to make this a business. So I left my job and I did exactly that, and I started buying and selling initially just vintage hi-fi stuff, but then a bit more modern hi-fi, dabbled a bit in the sort of the DJ and professional audio side of things, all selling through eBay, mostly buying through eBay as well. I was also trawling charity shops. I was trawling the online pawnbrokers, so the cash converters, cash generator, all these sites that resell secondhand stuff, and you found that particularly with the niche things, there was an awful lot of people who didn't really understand what they were selling and didn't really know its value. So you could grab a few bargains, and I was doing brilliantly. I went from turning over sort of £5,000 a month, and then on average I was turning over sort of somewhere between sort of £10,000 and £12,000 a month. By then I'd added a few sort of new bits and pieces to my repertoire, still only selling on Amazon and eBay. Just on eBay actually at the time. I then started selling new things on Amazon. That really helped boost that, and I was probably turning £15,000 a month, something like that, from just literally myself. My parents God bless them, I would chip in occasionally and would help me sort of package some items up and stuff when I was really under pressure. But generally, most days I was working less hours than a full-time job, and I was turning over a decent amount of money and with a decent margin, and I was doing really, really well for myself. I wasn't just doing hi-fi stuff at this stage. I was buying and selling anything I saw profit in. I took the occasional hit. Sometimes I got a bit enthusiastic. I sort of got into buying and selling watches, and I found that they sort of turned over really, too slowly for my liking. There was profit there if you knew what you were looking at, but the competition was huge. The margins were much smaller than the stuff I was used to dealing with, and they took a long time to sell. Plus the possibilities of getting ripped off with a fake or having losses or anything, the stakes were much higher. But typically I was doing really well. So what's the point of this video? Well, two things cost me my business, and I'll talk about the addiction side later. But firstly, my ego. My ego was a massive key in my downfall. It was a thing that really didn't help the business. I started being quite brash. I bought myself a Rolex. Now, a lot of business people have Rolexes. People who are doing well for themselves buy Rolexes. I bought it prematurely. I bought it with the company's money, and I bought it before I should. I bought it before I'd really established. I was still growing. I was still, finding my feet. Although I was doing good numbers, I was still finding my feet, and I wanted to show off. I wanted to show off how well I was doing, but I didn't think it through, and I used company money, which ultimately is taxable, to buy this Rolex, and actually to buy what turned into a watch collection, which in its time included 2 Rolexes, about 3 Omegas, had a gold-plated Breitling, all of these really fancy watches, along with a lot of Tag Heuers, a lot of lesser brands as well. But I built a substantial watch collection, all off company money. So one thing I could say is maybe my knowledge of business and finances and doing accounts, that let me down. But ultimately, it was my ego. It was wanting to show off. I bought a lot of designer clothes. I went out a lot. I found myself splashing cash around like it was nobody's business. I remember one Christmas, my local pub, buying bottles of bubbly. Can't remember what it was. I don't know whether it was champagne or Prosecco or whatever, but just buying bottles and bottles of it and just literally giving it to everyone in the pub, offering random strangers glasses of this fizzy stuff. Just because I had an ego, and I thought I was Bertie Big Bollocks. I really thought, I was doing well, and I was splashing the cash about, thinking I was the big I am, and all before time. And this is before I'd had the Inland Revenue to pay. This is before I was still renting the same house. I wasn't making any overpayments on it. I wasn't looking to buy a house. I wasn't putting any money aside. I was running the business and spending the proceeds as quickly as I was earning them. So that basically meant I never grew, and I was still doing good numbers though. It was fine. I was still living quite a brash lifestyle. But then I made a grave mistake. I figured that I could take my foot off the gas a little bit, and I could still be making enough money to live on. I also found that I was able to work from the pub. All I needed most of the time was a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection, and I could work anywhere. And obviously, me being someone who likes to drink and also likes to show off. What's to a youngish lad? What is more appealing than being able to work from the pub? Take my MacBook Pro, because obviously it had to be a MacBook Pro, didn't it? Because I had to be seen to be doing all right. Take my MacBook and sit at a table in the pub and have a pint of Stella, and this is living the life. I think I shared photos on social media of me working from the pub, and living the life with I might have even shared a picture of making sure my wallet was in view with a load of cash showing. And looking back, I was just such a dickhead, because what I could have been doing was, building my business, cementing my success and actually building something that ultimately would set me in good stead for the future. But no, what I was doing was taking whatever money I was earning and using it to show off. And not only did this probably alienate people, because people probably looked at me and thought, what a bellend, what it's just flashing the cash, or flash the cash Harry over there, And people, maybe some people did think I was doing really, really well for myself, which is obviously what I wanted them to think. But ultimately, that just makes the downfall that much harder. So anyway, I was religiously now, rather than popping to the pub occasionally to answer my emails, I was now going to the pub to do as much of my work as I feasibly could there. And I was getting there with my bag on my back and my laptop and setting up a little station with my pint and doing my work. But of course, to me now, looking back, it's obvious, but at the time, it probably wasn't to a lot of people. The gap between me getting to work at the pub, sitting there, doing my work, and finishing was getting narrower. I was working for less and less time, and I was going to the pub more and more often. And what happened when I finished my work? Well, I wouldn't go, right, that's enough for the day, put my laptop in my bag and go home. What I'd do is I'd stay there, because by now I was getting to know more and more people in the pub. I was chatting more and more to the regulars and making friends, or so I thought. And so what I was doing now was getting to the pub and maybe doing an hour on the laptop, and then I'd put the laptop away and I'd get another beer and a few more beers, and time would pass. And then it got to a stage where I was barely doing anything at all, but I was officially, if anyone asked, I was working at the pub. Well, I wasn't. I was going to the pub, I was drinking at the pub, and then I was gambling at the pub. So now the money was still coming in, but I was spending it really rapidly. It's certainly an increasing rate. I was drinking more than I'd ever drunk. I was gambling every day. Some days a little bit, some days I'd lose £200-300 in the machines in the pub because I had the money coming in. But ultimately I came unstuck, didn't I? Because the money slowed down, because whilst I was maintaining, I wasn't putting any new ideas into the business. Competition by this stage was increasing. I knew several people now in my local area alone that were doing similar things to me. One I knew personally, but there was other people who were buying and selling the same sorts of things, obviously having seen, what I was doing, or maybe just natural, that's naturally how the market went. More and more people were doing what I was doing, and it was cutting my margins, and it was cutting the amount I could buy, it was cutting the amount I could sell. All this time I was spending more and more money maintaining this lifestyle that I built for myself, this flash lifestyle, but also this increasing alcohol habit and this increasing gambling problem that I was feeding with money from the business. And obviously, anyone who's run a business, anyone who knows anything about business will see where this is going. The tax bill arrived, the corporation tax bill. Now, I had a good accountant, but I still had to pay tax. You still have to pay tax, and because the margins on what I was buying and selling were so good, it was very, I couldn't plead a loss, because that would be both immoral and illegal, and also incredibly easy to spot. So I had to pay tax, and I got a tax bill in. It was high four figures, and I couldn't pay it. I couldn't pay it because I didn't have the cash, because I was treating the company accounts as my own. I had made the mistake that so many people, I think, make, but to such a degree that I have a balance, therefore I have money I can spend. But the problem was, I made that mistake so much worse than so many people, because I was drinking, and because, more importantly, I was gambling. So I didn't have the money. And by this point, I had, my turnover had dropped. And on that turnover, the margin had dropped, like I say, because increased competition and not being able to get what I was selling at the same price as I was previously. So there was no way that I could pay this tax bill, certainly not within the you know, the time scale I had to pay it. So I had to contact HMRC and explain my situation and say, look, I can't pay this. They were actually quite good. They set me up on a payment plan, so I was able to pay like £1,000 a month off it. But in the end, I wasn't able to do that. I defaulted, and basically I had to sort of close the company down. I had to dissolve the company. I could keep running it for a bit. I was made some payments. Ultimately, and I'll say this because actually I think this is important, I did pay all my taxes. I paid HMRC everything that I owed them. Eventually it was all out of my own income, and that was from a job that I had to get. But I did pay HMRC everything that I owed, because actually I may well have been able to get away with not paying it, but the way I saw it, I'd spent that money. You know, I'd spent it. It's not like the company had lost it. I had spent it on myself and on my indulgences and on looking flash and looking like, you know, trying to look like Bertie Big Bollocks. So I wanted to pay that money back because I felt I should. So yes, the downfall of my business was down to, yes, my addictions, gambling and drinking to a lesser extent. But mostly it was down to my ego and wanting to be the big I am before I'd actually made it. I had cash flow, and there was thousands and thousands of pounds sometimes sat in bank accounts that I had access to and had my name on them. But it wasn't my money. It was the business's money. It was the taxman's money. And ultimately I put it in the pockets of the gambling companies and put it over the bar and spent it on ridiculous, you know, status symbols that I didn't need. And as it boils down, I couldn't afford. So I don't know what people will get from that video. Hopefully it's a lesson. And if I ever get back into business, at the moment I'm in an employed role and I'm enjoying it, and you know, it's a good company, it's a good job, my boss is a decent guy, and not just because he watches my videos occasionally, but no, he's a decent guy, and yeah, it's a good company to work for. So I have plans in the future, probably more part-time plans. I don't really plan to leave my job at this time, but I've learnt my lesson, and I guess that's all you can take away sometimes in life. And actually, if you look at it, following off from the video I made earlier today, you know, sometimes you lose a lot of money gambling, you spend a lot, you waste a lot, and you look back and you think, why was I so stupid? But I guess you can just sometimes treat it as a very expensive lesson, and next time, hopefully, I'll know better. But thanks for watching. Like I say, it's just a bit of a personal story, that one. Hopefully you found it a little bit interesting, you know, and maybe in the future, if you know, if you happen to stumble upon an element of success yourselves, or if you're successful already and worried about what could happen, then yeah, do as I say, don't do as I do, because what I did was not the best. Like the video if you found it interesting. Like I said at the front end, please do subscribe if you like the video, if you think it might be useful to someone, or if you're just feeling nice and want to help me get to that 200 mark by the end of the day. Have a nice day, guys. Thanks for watching. I think I've said that a million times now, and catch you on the next one. See you soon.